So it's my pleasure to call up Shari Cohen to speak about her Jewish journey a little bit and her relationship to Community Synagogue, and we're just so happy that you're here. We've been kind of in a period of telling stories since this brand new sanctuary opened. So it's really nice to, not just have me and the rabbis talk all the time, but hear from you sometimes, and you have Torah to teach us as well.
So I grew up in Rybrook in the same house I live in now, and my family belonged to KTI Synagogue, where I went to Hebrew school 3 days a week, for 5 years, and I attended the high holidays with all my families and friends, and we used to hide in the little stained glass windows because the services were really, really long there. And then about 18 years ago, when my daughter, who's now 27, started Hebrew school, Rob and I joined Community Synagogue, and both Maddie and Melissa, our kids, were bat mitzvahed here. So I started coming to services, Friday night services, in May of 2014, almost 5 years ago. My sister was ill and needed a sudden and very serious surgery. My parents were out of the country, and we wanted to tell them before the surgery, and we did, but we kind of had to wait because they were going to Normandy that Friday, and we didn't want them to miss it. My mom had been researching it for months, and she was talking about the special small area of the synagogue with all the Jewish stars instead of the crosses. And my husband's uncle was in the first wave at Normandy, and he survived. And when he was on that beach, he told the story, he's since passed, that he made a deal with God that if God let him live, he would go to temple every day for the rest of his life, and he did. So he survived it. He kept his deal, and so that them going to Normandy was really important to us. So my other sister and I decided to wait. But I knew that if my dad had been home, he would have gone to temple and said a prayer, because he always did when someone was sick or needed a surgery. I had no idea what prayer was, but I knew that he would go and say a prayer. So I came to services that Friday night, and I learned that the name of the prayer is Mishaberach, although I learned how to spell it when I wrote this speech. I did not make it through a service for most of that summer without having to leave the sanctuary to go outside because I was crying so hard. And I didn't want to disrupt the service. But I kept coming that first Friday and virtually every Friday thereafter. And I later realized, quite a while later, that was the only place I cried. And I remember so well the day, and I don't know if you remember, but that as you looked at me during the Mishaberach, I remember the day a couple months later when I smiled and I didn't have to say her name because she was okay. So thank God she is doing really well. It's almost 5 years and she is doing great. And then I was able to make it through services without crying. And then the words and the melodies, I love Melanie, just became so familiar, and they made me feel so comfortable and comforted. And it became a place where I was able to kind of turn off the week and tune out. I only look at my phone a couple of times and feel kind of by myself in a room full of people, but also feel comfort even when I come alone. I feel peace and I feel gratitude for the many blessings in my life. And when there's something hard going on, I feel really comforted here. The words and melodies really fill me up. And when one of the clergy invite me to light the candles or do something like this, I feel even more connected. I find myself really getting here and, like I tell my patients, to just exhale and take a breath and let go of some of the stress. And I realized that over time, whether it was our old sanctuary or Presbyterian Church of Rye, it didn't matter where it was. It's become more than a place I go to on Friday night. It's become a ritual for me and a community and a source of peace in my life. So the last time I was up here was in October of 2015 when I decided to become a bat mitzvah. I called Melanie one day in the spring and I said I was thinking about maybe becoming a bat mitzvah. And then when I got off the phone, I said to Rob, I'm getting bat mitzvahed in September. So I really couldn't put into words exactly why I wanted to become a bat mitzvah. See, and I'm shaking. But I knew it was right, and I knew it made me feel more connected and a part of the congregation and something bigger than myself. In retrospect, it's clear that it was a much more meaningful experience, not to mention less expensive than it would have been for me at age 13. I went all through Hebrew school, but I was terrified to get up in front of a room full of people. So I told Melanie I wanted to do what the kids did, so I read the same amount. I didn't have the montage or the party favors or the big party, but I did have food at the house afterwards because I'm Jewish, so, you have to have food. So over the years, as I've been coming to services and thinking about my bar mitzvah and about this story, I've kind of thought about how many ways there are commonalities between my profession and the clergy. So I went back to school later in life. I had been an attorney a million years ago. I was a nursery school teacher for a while, and then I went back and I became a licensed mental health therapist. And sometimes I hear something in a sermon or in a discussion before or after services, and it really resonates. And the one thing that particularly stands out is the sense of community that I experience here since I've become a regular. So back in the day, before internet and computers, and before we became such a mobile society, community was more of the norm. People lived in the same town where they'd grown up, near family and friends. They stayed in the same job longer. Now people are in like 10 jobs over the course of their lives. They didn't travel as much, and they didn't have emails and texts and Instagram and Snapchat and who knows what else that my kids are using that I have no idea. And this meant that community was something that people didn't really have to look for. It was part of the fabric of their lives. And now that's not so much the case. Our kids often go away to college or to live or to work with families of their own. We certainly change jobs more often, and we are very often virtually connected rather than in person. But a sense of community is really important because we, at our core, are human beings, and I think as such, we crave that social connection. It allows us to feel less isolated in a society where often people do feel isolated, and they don't always feel comfortable telling other people that they do. And it gives us an opportunity to share our joys and our burdens in a way that ironically lets us expand our joys and divide our burdens. Sharing that works both ways. So I realized that coming every Friday night and getting to know many of you and the clergy, this ritual has given me a sense of community at a time in my life when my kids were launched our children, and my world was getting a little smaller, and this and work allowed it to expand a little bit. And it's become a real blessing in my life. So I just want to thank Rabbi Groper and Rabbi Frankel. She said she's going to watch, and Cantor Cooperman. And everyone who's here, because you always make me feel very at home, even from that first time. Somehow people intuitively knew that when to come over and lay a hand on your shoulder and just let you be, and when you wanted someone to talk to you. And most of all, I want to thank Rob, because if I want him to come, even when he's tired, he makes Callie get off of him, and he comes, and not, he goes out to dinner late with me, and the next time we're up here, I think we're going to renew our vows for our 25th anniversary. And I have to say that I never in a million years expected that on that really sad and scary night when I came to services, almost 5 years ago, I would have found such solace in a place that I've really, really grown to love. So thank you to all of you.